America, a symbol of power and resilience, stands tall, just like the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Look closer, however. The foundation's cracks are beginning to show. Nearby, another iconic structure, the Roman Colosseum, once a grand monument of a mighty empire, now lies in ruins. Under a dark and foreboding sky, dust swirls around both. The similarities between these two symbols are difficult to ignore. Just as the Roman Empire, believed to be invincible, crumbled under its own weight, the question now looms over America. Are we next? Political unrest, economic strain, military overreach, and social divisions, all of these played a role in Rome's downfall. And now, these same forces are threatening the stability of the United States. History has a way of repeating itself, and as the dust settles, it's becoming clearer that America may be walking a similar path. What we're facing today is not just a series of isolated problems. It's a merging of crises that threaten to erode the very foundation of this nation, just as the ruins of Rome slowly faded into history. As we look at these towering symbols of power and strength, now crumbling, one must ask, how did it come to this? How did an empire as powerful as Rome fall, and how close is America to following in its footsteps? This is not about fear-mongering. It's about understanding the signs and what they mean for the future of this country. Political instability was one of the key factors that led to Rome's decline. The empire, once united under strong leadership, began to fracture as corruption, infighting, and power struggles became the norm. Fast forward to today, and America is grappling with a similar crisis. In Washington, D.C., the Capitol building, a symbol of American democracy, has become a battleground for partisan conflicts. Gridlock and polarization have replaced cooperation and compromise. Legislation stalls, government shutdowns become more frequent, and the public's trust in elected officials continues to plummet. This political chaos isn't just a passing phase. It's a sign of deeper issues that threaten the stability of the nation. Consider the constant power struggles in Congress, where party lines have hardened to the point that meaningful dialogue seems impossible. Just as Rome's Senate became a place of backstabbing and betrayal, America's political arena is increasingly characterized by division and hostility. Leaders prioritize defeating opponents over governing for the common good. This isn't just politics as usual. It's a symptom of a system in decline. The consequences of this instability are far-reaching. Critical issues like healthcare, infrastructure, and national security remain unaddressed as the government struggles to function effectively. Public confidence erodes, and people begin to lose faith in the institutions that were once the bedrock of American society. This erosion of trust mirrors the disillusionment felt by Roman citizens as their empire began to crumble. But political instability doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's often the result of other underlying problems that are also strikingly similar to those that plagued Rome. In the next section, we'll explore how economic decline played a crucial role in the fall of Rome and how it poses a serious threat to America today. Rome's economy, once the envy of the world, gradually collapsed under the weight of its own success. A combination of unsustainable military spending, economic inequality, and a devalued currency left the empire vulnerable to internal decay and external threats. Now look at America. Are we witnessing the same troubling patterns? America's national debt has soared past $32 trillion, and with every passing year, the burden grows heavier. Like Rome, America spends vast sums on its military, maintaining a global presence that stretches resources thin. While this heavy spending ensures security abroad, it comes at a cost. Essential domestic investments, like infrastructure, education, and healthcare, often take a backseat. Consider the growing income inequality in America. The middle class, once the backbone of the economy, is shrinking, while the wealth gap continues to widen. The rich grow richer, while the average American struggles to make ends meet. This divide echoes the economic disparity that plagued late-stage Rome, where the elite enjoyed vast wealth and the rest of the population faced increasing hardship. Rome's over-reliance on slave labor contributed to economic stagnation, much like how America's reliance on low-wage jobs and outsourcing is undermining the financial stability of millions of its citizens. Inflation is another troubling sign. As Rome expanded, it devalued its currency to pay for its vast empire, leading to runaway inflation that eroded the purchasing power of its citizens. Today, America faces its own inflationary pressures, with rising prices eating away at the value of the dollar. The cost of living is climbing, and many Americans are feeling the squeeze, just as Roman citizens did centuries ago. These economic challenges aren't just abstract figures, they're impacting the lives of everyday Americans. From the devaluation of wages to the increasing cost of basic goods, the economic foundation of the United States is showing signs of strain. If left unchecked, these issues could lead to a broader economic collapse, mirroring the fate of Rome. But economic decline is only part of the story. A nation's strength also lies in its ability to defend itself, both at home and abroad. Rome's vast empire, once a testament to its power, eventually became its Achilles heel. The Roman military, stretched thin across the empire's extensive borders, struggled to defend against mounting external threats. This overextension left Rome vulnerable and, in the end, contributed to its collapse. Today, America finds itself in a similarly precarious position. The United States maintains over 800 military bases in more than 70 countries around the world. This global presence, while projecting power and influence, comes at a significant cost. The defense budget consumes a substantial portion of the nation's resources, often at the expense of domestic needs. Just like Rome, America's military commitments are large, and the strain is beginning to show. Consider the long and costly wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. These conflicts not only drained the national treasury, but also exacted a heavy toll on the military itself. Troops overstretched, equipment worn down, and morale tested. While Rome faced barbarian invasions on its borders, America faces a more complex and globalized threat environment, from cyber warfare to terrorism. Yet the core issue remains the same. A military spread too thin, struggling to maintain its dominance while resources dwindle. The parallels don't end there. As Rome's empire expanded, it relied increasingly on foreign mercenaries to fill the ranks of its legions, undermining the loyalty and cohesion that once defined its military might. Similarly, America's reliance on private military contractors and the outsourcing of defense functions raise questions about the sustainability and integrity of its military forces. These practices, while efficient in the short term, may erode the foundational strength of the U.S. military in the long run. The cost of maintaining such a huge military presence is not just financial. It also distracts attention and resources away from pressing domestic issues. Infrastructure crumbles, public education suffers, and healthcare remains inadequate, all while billions are spent on maintaining military operations overseas. This imbalance mirrors the choices Rome made in its later years, prioritizing military conquests over the well-being of its citizens. As America continues to stretch its military capabilities across the globe, it faces the same risks that led to Rome's downfall. A military spread too thin can no longer effectively protect its borders or maintain its influence. Ignoring these lessons from history could have dire consequences. But the challenges America faces are not just external. Internally, the fabric of society is fraying as deep divisions threaten to tear the nation apart. Not only did external pressures and economic troubles weaken Rome, but the slow unraveling of its own society also contributed to its downfall. As the empire expanded, the shared values that once unified its people began to erode. Civic duty gave way to indifference, trust in institutions faded, and the sense of a common Roman identity fractured into competing interests. This societal decay was a key factor in Rome's eventual collapse, and America, too, is facing a similar internal crisis. Across the country, cultural and ideological divisions are deepening. Conversations once grounded in shared values and mutual respect are now marked by hostility and division. The bonds that once held communities together, trust in neighbors, faith in institutions, and belief in a common American identity, are weakening. From race and religion to politics and class, Americans are increasingly divided over fundamental questions of who we are and what our future should look like. Look at the rising polarization in American society. Social media has become a battleground of conflicting opinions, with people retreating into echo chambers that reinforce their views rather than challenge them. The public sphere, once a place of debate and dialogue, is now characterized by shouting matches and a refusal to compromise. This cultural fragmentation is eerily similar to the divisions that plagued Rome in its later years, where once united citizens turned against each other as the empire crumbled around them. The decline in civic engagement is another troubling sign. In Rome, as citizens lost faith in their leaders and institutions, they withdrew from public life. The same is happening in America today. Voter turnout is low, government trust is at historic lows, and fewer people are willing to participate in the political process. This disengagement weakens the foundations of democracy, just as it did in Rome, leaving the nation vulnerable to collapse from within. There's also a growing sense of disillusionment, particularly among younger generations. Many feel disconnected from the institutions that were once central to American life: schools, churches, and civic organizations. This detachment leads to a loss of purpose and a weakening of the social fabric that holds the country together. The parallels to Rome's decline are striking. As citizens become more disconnected from government and each other, the nation weakens. Social decay is one of the most dangerous threats to any nation because it undermines the very core of its identity and strength. If America cannot find a way to rebuild its social fabric, it risks following the same path as Rome, a once great empire that collapsed under the weight of its own divisions. But social decay isn't the only threat. External forces hastened Rome's collapse, and today, America confronts its own external challenges. We'll examine how these external threats, cyber warfare, global competition, and terrorism, mirror the challenges Rome faced from invading forces in the next section, and why America must take them seriously to avoid Rome's fate. Internal decay and economic troubles were not the only factors that weakened Rome. Barbarian invasions, which the empire could no longer defend against, overran Rome in its later years. Today, while America may not face literal invasions, external threats are very real and just as dangerous. Cyber warfare, global economic competition, and terrorism are the modern-day equivalents of Rome's invading tribes, and if ignored, these threats could hasten America's decline. One of the most significant external threats today is cyber warfare. Nations like Russia and China have developed sophisticated cyber capabilities that can target America's infrastructure, economy, and even its democratic processes. From hacking government databases to interfering in elections, these attacks aren't just theoretical, they're happening now. Rome fell in part because it couldn't defend against external invasions, and America is vulnerable to a new kind of invasion, one that's digital rather than physical, but no less destructive. Then there's the challenge of global economic competition, particularly from China. Just as Rome faced competition from rising powers on its borders, America now faces economic and technological competition on a global scale. China's rapid rise as a global superpower jeopardizes America's position as the world's leading economy. China is undoubtedly challenging America's dominance with its advanced technology, massive infrastructure investments, and growing influence in global trade. If America fails to adapt and innovate, its competitors could overtake it, just as they did Rome. Terrorism also remains a constant threat, and while the nature of the threat has changed since the events of September 11th, the impact of terrorist attacks can still destabilize nations. Non-state actors, like terrorist organizations, operate outside the traditional rules of warfare, making them difficult to counter. This is not unlike the barbarian tribes that Rome faced, unconventional enemies who didn't fight by the rules of traditional armies. While America has managed to prevent large-scale attacks in recent years, the threat remains, and vigilance is essential to maintaining national security. All of these external threats, cyber warfare, global competition, and terrorism, present serious challenges to America's future. Rome was ultimately brought down by a combination of internal decay and external pressures, and America is now facing a similar convergence of crises. If we don't take these threats seriously, the consequences could be catastrophic. But all is not lost. America still has time to learn from Rome's mistakes and chart a different course. History has shown us that even the greatest empires can fall. Rome's decline was not inevitable. It occurred as a result of ignoring the warning signs. Today, America faces similar challenges. But unlike Rome, we still have time. America's fate isn't sealed. We have the power to change course. These problems, political division, economic strain, military overreach, social decay, and external threats, are real. But they aren't impossible. The real question is how we, as citizens, will handle America's collapse. This nation's strength has always come from its people. We have the ability to rebuild trust, bridge divides, and tackle the issues head-on. It starts with each of us taking action, voting, advocating for change, and standing up for the values that unite us. But it doesn't stop there. Talk to your neighbors, engage in your community, share this video, spark conversations, and get involved in shaping America's future. Small actions, when multiplied by millions, become powerful movements. Let's learn from Rome's mistakes and make sure America's story is one of renewal, not decline. The future is in our hands. What we do today will decide tomorrow.